So Sue, first thing that comes to mind when I think of Sue is she's a great friend. She has brought a lot of love and care and support into my life, but also those of you who know her know that this is her life purpose, and that's to support other people to grow, be it children or be it adults. Sue has been ahead of school for over 30 years, Child Peace Montessori in Portland, Oregon. And now her next step in life is to support leaders and other people who are on their development path in their growth. So Sue, I will now give word to you, and I'll run to help Sveta with the technical things. Thank you, Sue.
Well, good morning from Portland, Oregon, and Happy New Year to all of you. I know we've all been missing each other, and during the time away, the issues didn't go away that all of you are dealing with, in your schools, in your classrooms. But through it all, as Mirka said, we're always trying to find that joy and connection. And my joy and connection is Pam Wisner, who is my dear, dear friend. And we have been together. We're supposed to actually be in Sicily because we both retired this year. We were going to go on a pilgrimage hike, but that didn't happen. So we decided to do Zoom instead. Anyway, when I finished my training in Atlanta, Georgia, my AMI primary training in the 1970s, I worked for 3 years before I found my way to Marin Montessori School. And in the first year, I worked as an assistant in a classroom of 36 children. And there were also 2 trained Montessori teachers. But during that time, I really understood what the role of the assistant was. And I learned so much about talking to children, collaborating with other adults. And then I had a class for 2 years, and then I got to Marin Montessori School, and that's where I met Pam. And Pam was a classroom assistant in another classroom in the school. And so we began to know each other, and at the end of a year, she came and joined me in my classroom. And long story, but subsequently she ended up making her pilgrimage to Atlanta, took her training, came back, took my classroom, and we've just been lifelong friends and colleagues. And over the years that after I moved to Portland, the years that I've been focusing on administration, Pam has continued to focus in the classroom. And she is the most extraordinary example of a master teacher in Montessori. So she doesn't usually come out and share, and I feel so excited she said yes when I asked her. So with that, Pam, would you like to say a little more to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm not sure what happened, but it said my internet was unstable and you all froze. So please keep your fingers crossed that everything's going to be okay in San Rafael, California, where I'm sitting in my kitchen right now. Yes, it has been a pleasure to be a good friend of Sue and be part of the Montessori community for all these years. And I'm grateful to be here today and grateful that Sue asked me. I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. So it's just a big leap for me to speak on Zoom. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of my experiences with you.
Great. So what we want to do is just to set the framework, because we all know that this is the challenge, whether you're in the role as a teacher, working with an assistant, or as the head of school or an administrator. The relationship, that essential relationship between a teacher and the person they work with every day, can be felt when you walk in the room. When I do consultations, I know this is the very first thing I notice when I walk in the room is what is happening with the 2 adults, because it sets the tone of everything. So I'm going to take the first few minutes and pull up my PowerPoint and just go through some essentials from the administrator's point of view. Things that we should always be thinking about when we are creating policies, procedures, hiring, firing of the people that play that assistant role in the school. And then Pam is going to pull up a PowerPoint, and she'll take most of the time then, but we've set it up in a question and answer. So we have some basic questions that you might have in your mind about that role. And then Pam's going to take it from there. So I'm going to share my screen. I made it very basics. Those of you that know me know I like nice photographs, but I have none today, so I can stay on track. Okay, so let's start from the beginning with two really wonderful quotes from Montessori. It is my belief that the thing which we should cultivate in our teachers is more spirit than the mechanical skill of the scientist. And such is our duty toward the child, to give a ray of light and to go our way. I like both of these quotes because they talk about the spirit of the adult. And it also talks about the idea that we are a light in the child's experience. We want to come to the situation and remove ourselves as quickly as we can. So quickly, a list of the teacher's journey from training into the classroom. First of all, we're moving from that incubator, the teacher is, they're going from the incubator of training into the classroom. They get into the classroom, they experience reality. They spend all their time creating this prepared environment. They're adapting to the specifics of their situation, and we know it's not always perfect. You all know right now in COVID, it's not perfect, and every teacher who has Montessori training knows it's not exactly like they were taught in training. And then you have to work with someone else in the classroom. Sometimes you don't have an assistant at first if the class is quite small, but at some point, someone will be supporting your work. And then you as the teacher have to put all of that together. So it starts for you as the teacher, knowing yourself. You really need that self-knowledge. So that's the acceptance of what your experience is, what your mood is, knowing your own stresses. You need to know how you handle challenges. You need to know how you react when you get 10 6-year-olds in your classroom. You need to know how to react when the classroom makeup or the materials aren't perfect. And then when you recognize what your situation is, you have to reflect on it. How are you going to be in that situation? What is that inner part of you that can meet the situation even if it's not perfect? And how will you bring calm, patience to the environment? And then that next step as the teacher is that you have to decide on your vision. Your vision is going to be your plan. What is your plan, your path that will take you? And then you think about who that person is that's going to partner with you. So let's jump ahead and assume you now have hired someone as an assistant. The next step is you have to know their story. Who are they? Who are they deeply? What are their skills? What do they know about children? And what are their specific needs for communication? Each of us has our own way, just like the teacher did, of knowing themselves, reflecting, and having vision. So you need to know those things about your assistant as well. It's really important at the beginning to understand what are the peripheral skills that an assistant has. Just like it is unknown to you exactly the moment that you are going to connect a child with a specific piece of material, You don't know exactly when you are going to draw on the skills of your assistant. So ask and find out, do they know how to talk to children? Can they sew? Are they the person that can talk to the parent in a difficult moment? What arts or crafts do they have? Do they have beautiful calligraphy? Are they physically flexible on the playground? Do they really know how to read a story out loud? And now we think a bit more from the administrator's role. Through the administrator's lens. When you set up job descriptions and when you talk about the expectations, this assistant needs to understand that this is not a teaching job, that you are an assistant to the teacher, not specifically an assistant to the children. That this job can be a wonderful way to study children, that the primary responsibility in the classroom, in most situations, is the order and care of the environment. That observational skills become a requirement for this job, and you must be willing to learn how to observe. You also have to make sure that there is a time for the teacher and the assistant to meet together in quality time. And also, there must be an opportunity for professional development. And then you must remind the assistant that they are, like many of the adults in the environment, the calm in the storm. And exactly the way the teacher breaks out skill sets when they take a practical life activity apart and put it into the components, the steps. We have to do that for the adult who's working as well. So we need to help the teacher be sure that an assistant understands these terms. What is redirection and what does that mean? What is intervention and what does that mean? What do we mean when we talk about limitations? And what does it mean when we say we're setting our priorities? What exactly do we mean and what are we talking about when we talk about promoting independence? These are words that are the language of Montessori. And they are not necessarily the words or the language that an assistant has, and it takes some time for them to know them. But the administrator from the big umbrella of the school has to set systems in place so that these things can happen. And then we need to remember that everyone in the school community communicates with compassion. Your relationship with all adults, the assistant, the janitor, the person in the kitchen, it needs to be one in which it is similar to that of your relationship with a child. The goal is to help instill confidence in themselves and to foster their healthy independence. We want for them to observe and listen and interact with that assistant as though they really mattered. And for all the other adults, your tone of voice, your expression, your attention, they all reflect what's in your heart. And your assistant can feel it. And that there has to be a specific time and place that is respectful and meets the needs of that assistant, so they know that you are invested in their growth. The infrastructure of the whole school has to be in place. The administration needs to assure that everyone is on the same bus, traveling in the same direction. The teacher should be able to hire their assistant whenever possible. And the administration needs to provide job description, training, professional development. There needs to be a process for evaluation, and there absolutely needs to be a process throughout the school for the recognition of effort and collaboration. And there has to be the potential for personal growth on the job. She must acquire a moral alertness which has not been demanded by any other method. And I'd like to say that again, because this spiritual aspect of the adult, the preparation of the adult, becomes so important. It's what distinguishes our work in Montessori from other modes of education, which has not been demanded by any other method, a mingling of calm, patience, love, and humility. Virtues, not words, form her main qualification. This sets the tone from the administrator's lens, the job of administration and the people who can provide the prepared environment for the adults in the community. So now I'm going to stop my share and get back to all of you. Let me get back into full screen. And Pam is going to talk with you about that relationship with the assistant.
So this is a picture of the primary classes at Marin Montessori School. When Sue and I worked together, it didn't quite look like this. It's evolved over the years. The school started as a model home, and Sue and I worked in that room, which had lots of different angles, and it was very hard to see the whole classroom at the same time. And the class that I worked in is behind the tree. It's one of the older classes, and then 3 toward the bay are the new primary classrooms. And Sue was able to find, oops, that's not working, pictures of the two of us working together in our primary classroom. And we were in San Francisco. I think we were with the older children on an outing.
I think we were going to the art museum.
So I was an assistant for 3 years. I worked 1 year with Margie Sheehy. I had 2 amazing mentor teachers to guide me and inspire me to take the Montessori training.
So we're going to start with a question and answer. Are we ready, Pam, for that?
I'm ready, yeah.
Okay. So one of the first questions that we thought you would like to know about from Pam, from her many years of experiences, how would you train a new assistant? How do you support the growth of a returning assistant? And how do you help the assistant learn about the adult's role in the classroom?
Well, I feel that the training of the assistant starts in the interview process. So when an applicant comes and applies for the job, we give her or him a copy of the job description to read, and then invite him to come into the classroom and observe in the classroom environment to see how the class operates. And then during the time that this applicant is speaking with the teachers, we spend a lot of time talking about the role of the teacher in the environment, the role of the adults in the environment, in supporting how they support the children, because I think the role is a lot different than most people are used to in other traditional education situations. So once the assistant is hired at our school, we're fortunate to have a bit of time before the class starts. So we have about a week, and it's, especially with a new assistant, it's really wonderful to have that time with your assistant, 6 hours every day, and to put the materials out, talk about the use of the materials, talk about the different areas of the classroom, and also have time to go over the roles and expectations of the assistant. I, over the years, have made a list of guidelines or expectations. And as Sue was talking about, that there's great detail in spelling out, transitions in the classroom, for example, how to make snack. So I go step by step as if I was writing a lesson for the assistant, for any adult that comes in the classroom to work with me and with the children. So, the first step is you put your placemat on your table that holds the spot for you. And then you wash your hands, and then you put the little card that said that you washed your hands in a little basket, and then you prepare your snack, and then you take your snack, and of course you eat it, and then there's a whole process for cleaning up. So the assistant is aware of all the different steps. So if she observes, or he observes that one of the children put their dirty dish back on the snack preparation table without washing it, then she can, go over there and say, let me show you where the dishwater is, and get the child back on track to do the next step. I also give my assistant a list of a lot of the grace and courtesy lessons that we'll be doing in the classroom throughout the year. And we spend time talking about how the adults model behavior in the classroom. I know when I first started being in the classroom, and I think all 40 years in the classroom, the hardest thing for me to do was to carry one thing at a time. I always thought that was not very efficient in using my time. So for example, when cleaning up the snack, I finally got a tray and I put all the different, snack items on the tray. So then I would be carrying it all at the same time and only one thing at a time. So we talk about the adult behaviors and how they operate in the classroom, and help model those lessons that we're giving to the children in grace and courtesy. And the third thing with my training of the assistant is I give a detailed list of the jobs throughout the day that the assistant will help with. First thing in the morning before class starts, before lunch, after lunch, at the end of the day, so that we can go over, all those different jobs that they'll be doing. I think it's important, as Sue mentioned earlier, to establish a time and routine for communication. I used to come in early so I could be there to talk to my assistant before the children arrived. And also we were fortunate at our school that we were able to have an hour once a week where we could sit down and really sit and chat and be face to face with our assistant and talk about, how the week went. I could do the assistant evaluations during that time. We can talk about our observations with each other. I would go over what the class events were, what the weekly or the monthly events, the weekly schedule of the class. We might talk about individual children. I would answer the assistant's questions during that time. We would reflect on, what is working well in the class, what do we need to tweak, and it was time for each of us to give each other constructive feedback about how things were going in the classroom. We practice observation at the beginning of the year. Every day, observation skills grow. So at the beginning of the year, every day, I would give a short guided observation for my assistant. And usually at the beginning of the year, it would be focused on the grace and courtesy lessons, like to watch for 15 minutes how many children have lifted their chair into the table, or to watch how many children walked across the classroom. Just how many children cleaned up their activity and put it away back on the shelf. So just to kind of give them sort of an awareness, that's where we would start these short observations during the morning. We always encourage at our school continuing education. And again, during that time at the beginning of the school year, setting up, I've given my assistant articles on the role of the assistant in the classroom that have been written by primary trainers, such as Molly O'Shaughnessy and Shannon Helfridge. Every summer in August, before school starts, I have the practice of reading the teacher's preparation and the discipline in the teacher in the absorbent mind to remind myself how to be in the classroom. And I share some of my insights from those 2 readings in the Absorbent Mind with the children. And throughout the year, we encourage the assistant to observe in the other classrooms at our school and attend assistant workshops. Sometimes a local trainer like Polly Soholt will have an assistant workshop, and we sponsor them all to go to that workshop. And we also encourage them to attend parent education events at our school, because they can learn about the materials and how what we educate the parents about, and how the children are, and how they use the materials in the classroom environment to deepen their understanding.
Pam, one of the things you mentioned to me is that at the beginning of the year, you take your assistant shopping, and I loved what your thinking is about why you take them shopping with you.
Well, one of the things, I am not a great shopper. So whenever I go somewhere with someone like Sue or another Montessori friend, I follow them around and get their, ideas. But I take the assistant partly for that, to help me pick out things, but also to, let them know how much detail and how much planning and coordination, and how important it is to have an attractive, prepared environment for the children. So it's kind of fun to go to the nursery and pick out seasonal plants to put on in the planter boxes on the deck, or pick out trays for practical life. So it kind of gives the assistant an idea of, the detail that as a teacher in the classroom, we think about those different things. And it's a fun bonding time. We always go out to lunch. At one point, we used to take all the primary teachers would go up to Montessori services in Santa Rosa, and we would go shopping with our assistants there, and then we would go to lunch together at a Mexican restaurant downtown by the Montessori services.
Okay. Pam, I had one more question. In your experience, I know you in the last years of your classroom work, you had the same assistant, but do you have any words of wisdom if your assistant has been in the class, been an assistant for a very long time, or they're brand new, things that you do differently in that preparation time?
Well, I believe that, for example, the observation, I don't expect an assistant to have the observation skills from the very beginning. And that's one of the areas that grows as the assistant comes back to the classroom year after year. And yes, I was very fortunate. My last assistant was with me for 10 years. And I went through her second childbirth, and she took the training 3 years ago. She did the 2 summer training, and then the last year we were together, she was not training. Unfortunately, we were on distance learning for the last semester, so we weren't together in the classroom, but we were together on Zoom. But it's amazing how her observation skills, especially after taking the training, really advanced. And one of the observations that I started doing when she became more experienced is before parent conferences, I made a sheet, and we both observed each child in the morning for the whole morning, for the 3-hour work period. And every 15 minutes, we wrote down, who the child was interacting with, what activities the child was working on, all the different aspects of the child being in the environment.
Great.
The other part of, having a more experienced assistant is they become very quick at helping you prepare and clean the environment, and that is amazing. So I know the children are responsible for the environment, but before and after school, we need to, deep clean the environment. And we ended up, working together as a team, and we've tried different ways to clean the environment throughout the years. Sometimes we do a little bit every day. Sometimes we do it one afternoon. We could both clean the environment in an hour pretty thoroughly. And, we enjoyed talking to each other while we were doing that. And the times when I was a little overwhelmed with my responsibilities, she would just pick up the slack. But usually we ended up splitting the responsibility. She did part of the classroom and I did the other part.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Pam. You want to? show us
Yeah.
your next slide.
This is a picture of my assistant. She has a chair in the classroom, and so do I, which is like our home base. So, and when I'm finished with a lesson, I go back and sit in my chair, and I usually make some notes on my clipboard. And Melissa does the same thing. If she goes to help a child, or if she goes to, you know, change the water in the dishwashing work, then she'll just go back and sit down in her chair and be available to overview the class. And in her lap is a clipboard, and on that clipboard is a daily record sheet. And on the daily record sheet is the name of every child in the class, and there it's arranged from the oldest to the youngest, and there's a little square, and that's where she takes notes and puts her observations. She can also, she can also observe, sorry, she can also observe and
I was thinking, you said there was something next to her as well, right? What does she keep next to her in a little basket?
oh yeah, in the basket next to her, there is there's a book, an interactive book. So if a child needs a little attention or direction, she'll bring the child over next to her. There's a book called Press Here, and she will go through the book with the child, and the child will become calm and then go back out and pick another activity after that. There's also some occupational therapy tools. They call them fidget toys. And sometimes a child might need some sensory calming. And so she would, you know, hand a fidget toy and be there with the child and maybe do some brushing to help, you know, calm his sensory overload before he or she could go back out into the classroom environment. So.
Pam, can I ask you one quick question before we, and maybe you can address it as we go into our next question, but how you actually, you and your assistant talk with each other during the time that you're in the classroom together. So moving on to this next question is, how over the years have you found that the assistant best supports you? And, you know, how do you need them to best support you in the classroom?
Well, the way that we talk to each other in the classroom is we go up to each other, and you know how children are with their parents sometimes, so they'll ask mom one thing and she'll, you know, redirect them or say no, then they'll go to the other adult and ask dad the same thing. So we often, if a child has come up to me and we've had a discussion and the child's not happy with the discussion and they have a feeling that she's going to go and talk to my assistant, I'll go over to Melissa, I'll go over to the assistant and say, this is the conversation I just had, just to let you know, so you can help me, you know, follow through with that. So the assistant has, oh, the other way we communicate in the classroom is non-verbally. You really get good at nonverbal communication. It feels like if I need some help over in this part of the classroom, and I can just like look at her, and you know, she is so aware, her observation skills, and she's observing through all of her senses. You know, she's listening to what's happening in the bathroom, or she can hear someone who goes out the door, you know, onto the deck. So even though in the picture before she was talking and focused on having the conversation with that 5-year-old, she still has the awareness of everything that's going on, and she can, you know, quickly shift her eyes like we do when we're giving a lesson and check it out and then decide, you know, if she needs to put her conversation on hold and go deal with the situation or just to let it go. I mean, I think that's one of the skills that develops as assistant returns to the class is knowing when to intervene and when not to intervene. You know, it's there's a tendency often for us to intervene more than necessary. So, you know, to be able to sit back and let the situation unfold. I think sometimes you have to sit on your hands and you'll be surprised at how amazingly the children resolve the situation. And that takes experience, you know, seeing that, you know, year after year and seeing the children so capable of doing that. So the assistant has best supported me in the classroom by the observations of the children in the class. You know, especially because I don't often get back to my chair to write down, you know, the lessons I just gave. And now I'm 70 years old. It was a little harder for me to retain all those lessons in my mind. So it was really helpful to go back and review, you know, some of her notes, and it kind of triggered my memory. Oh yes, you know, these are the lessons that I gave this morning. Her overview of the classroom, indoors and outdoors, is essential for the safety of the children. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the preparation and maintenance of the classroom environment is the assistant's job, in that is so helpful. You know, we would often exaggerate after having had assistants who you know, said that they felt like being a housekeeper. They were being a housekeeper. As I said, we are housekeepers. We're a keeper of the children's house. That's our job. That's my job, and it's your job also. And many assistants have skills in making materials. So that's really supportive and helpful in the classroom. And then another area, as assistant gains experience, is to do small group lessons. In that time after school, if my assistant was going to start doing lessons, I would give a lesson to her on how to do a small group. Before that, I would have her observe how I do small groups in the classroom and ask her what she observed. And then we'd have a little lesson and we'd practice it. And we talk about how long the lesson is going to be, and, you know, the different kinds of lessons that she could give during that time, mostly spoken language lessons. And when the assistant is giving the lesson, I am not giving lessons. I'm overviewing the classroom. So I'm sitting and I'm watching. And some of the lessons that the assistants can give in small groups are doing songs and reading a story, doing a poem, finger plays, movement indoors and outdoors, listening games, bring me games, classify nomenclature like the bird cards for our community. They could do the question game and just sit and have a discussion with the children. You know, gather a group of 4 or 5 children and, you know, talk about what they did on the weekend.
It's fantastic. So they don't present, in your view, they're not presenting any of the classroom lessons, but they're giving the lessons that can be done in small groups.
Yes, yes.
So what's she doing here, Pam?
This is an I Spy lesson with a small group. And it looks like the holidays, because I see a stocking in her hand and holly and an elf on the rug.
So you use different objects for the different, you know, holidays.
Yes, sometimes it's kind of fun for the children. We also, I mean, you can do I Spy with, she can have the child gather something from the classroom, like bring a brush or bring the soap or bring a card or tray, and then they can do I Spy from the objects that they gather. This time she's just using the objects in the basket, and do I Spy with the nomenclature cards too, the bird cards and the mammal cards and the reptile cards.
So would you have had Melissa, I mean, would you give her a list at the beginning of the morning? Would she know at the beginning of the morning which lessons she might do, or would those happen more spontaneously based on what was happening in the class?
I think that it was different. It would happen spontaneously sometimes, and then I would have, you know, in our Thursday meeting, I would say, I would like you to do this lesson with these children if you see them all available at the same time. So I think it worked both ways, Sue.
Great. So let's go on to the next question, which is how have you supported independence together? So working together with the teacher, how have you supported the independence of the children?
Well, I feel that supporting the independence begins with the record keeping and the careful observations, because when a child's needs are met, then the child is independent and engaged. So I try to do every twice a month or monthly, I make a list of lessons that I'm going to give to all the children. And then I also make a list on that daily record sheet that I showed you that was in Melissa's lap. She has that on her clipboard also. I make a list of choices that Melissa can give to the children. And the choices reflect where they are, the materials and things that they need to practice, or things that they haven't finished yet that might be in their folders still. Like someone might have been working on the stamp game and there were 3 problems finished, but there was 2 still left to do. So she would suggest maybe they could finish that stamp game activity that they had started.
I know you and I talked a lot about making sure that the assistant understands that the choice is a step, making choices is a step for making toward independence for children. Do you want to say something about that?
So,
I mean, just that by making choices, you're helping the children by having the children be able to choose between 2 things.
Yeah, if a child is independent in the classroom, then they're making their own choices. And some children take a while to develop that independence. And so we, as an adult, can help them make a choice. We give grace and courtesy lessons on how to go to a shelf and look at the materials that you had a lesson on, and you can make a choice from those materials. You can make a choice to, if you don't want to choose an activity, you could sit at a table and watch the classroom, or that's an activity too. Or you could stand and watch someone else do an activity.
So I love the language that you put up for this. So, can you read them out, because I love to hear them in your voice. It helps us imagine being in the classroom and hearing what your voice would be if you asked the children these things.
So a lot of these comments help the children in their path towards independence. So you could say to the child, you could try it again. Which friend could you ask for help? What part would you like help with? What is the next step? What do you think about your work? Where could you find that object in the class? Instead of expecting an adult to tell you where it is, where could you find it? And what would you like to do? Would you like to do this activity or this activity? There is the, giving the choices again. And sometimes they do not choose an activity. So I said, well, looks like you're not choosing anything right now. Maybe you would like to watch the class or walk on the line until you'd like to choose an activity. Although watching the class and walking on the line is also an activity, right? And what activity would you like to select from this shelf?
So as we go to the next slide, I know that we also talked about the fact that we can help the children with discrimination about their own work by asking them when they've done work, like if they've drawn letters on the board, which one do you like the best? Or when they go through their work in the, they can say, well, which one would you like to save and which one would you like to recycle? So all of those ways that you can offer that.
Yeah,
what's Melissa doing here?
Oh, she, the 3-year-old needed help with zipping her jacket. And I think she went over to get Melissa to come and help her because the zipper kept coming apart before she could pull it up. So Melissa stopped and observed, the point of interest that needed to be given. And she helped her use her right hand to hold the pin in the box by holding onto the bottom of the jacket and then pulling up the zipper tab. So, just coming in and giving a little point of interest and then leaving.
All right, so our last question, how have you supported social cohesion? I know in our conversation, we talked a lot about you can get good at running the class, making a beautiful prepared environment, even working well with the assistant, but that if we're working with individual children, but always within the social setting, how do the 2 adults work together to create that social cohesion? So tell us about that.
Okay, first of all, I really think you need to have a multi-age class to be able to have social cohesion that naturally fosters social cohesion. You really need those older children in the classroom environment to help the younger children, to give lessons to the younger children. And you need the younger children in the classroom to provide practice for the older children and to be able to ask them questions and ask for help. So together, I think we support social cohesion. The foundation for building social cohesion also is the grace and courtesy lessons. So, you know, observing the class, observing what grace and courtesy lessons are needed to help the children interact graciously with one another and to resolve conflicts with one another, you know, to use their language with one another, to be conscious of one another. All those lessons, you know, day after day that we do in grace and courtesy really builds that foundation for social cohesion. And then the third important factor I feel in the classroom is the respect and the teamwork and the positive attitude between the adults in the classroom. And the children really pick up on all that nonverbal communication. So I know there's some years when I began teaching, I know I had some assistance when things were not working well. You know, sometimes it was hard, you know, to keep that tension out of the classroom environment and, you know, try to resolve it at another time. So that relationship is really important at all times for the children, and they really absorb that energy in the class. And also to have that relationship with the children, you know, between the adults and the children, to speak respectfully to the children, to get down to their level, to listen, you know, to really develop that positive, supportive, encouraging trust with them.
Yeah. And over the years, is there a way that you think that that administration or the school structure really that needs to be in place so that you can have that respectful, positive relationship? Is there anything that you felt was really needing to be there for you as a support?
I think having the assistant evaluations, especially at the beginning of the year, and then we would do it if the assistant returned, we would start doing them once a year. Our levels director met with the assistants once a month and had assistant meetings, which was wonderful. I mean, they did more assistant education, so to speak. You know, they talked about observation. They talked about maybe challenges in the classroom. They talked about the prepared environment. So all the things that we've gone over today, the levels director would have more conversation about it. She might recommend that they read something and they discuss, you know, about what they read about the Montessori philosophy. So also, you know, having that time, it's really precious to have that time together to communicate. I can't reiterate how much that meant when we got that time after school once a week to, you know, be able to really sit down and, you know, not have to communicate in the closet, you know, so the children didn't hear or, you know, stay.
Well, thank you. So do you have one more slide or we?
I did have one more slide. I wanted to find something.
Photo and then we'll finish up.
Something about social cohesion. So that was kind of an abstract concept to illustrate, but I thought about this one where this is the afternoon class. Several of the younger children who stay full day are sleeping in the classroom. And one of the children noticed, of course, that the butterfly was emerging from its chrysalis. And gradually I watched all the children move toward the shelf so that they could see. And I have to say, I was really impressed by the social cohesion of the class, because the older children, the taller children stood in the back. I mean, they were all watching so calmly and carefully and quietly. And then I see the two girls in the front are sort of beckoning maybe a 3-year-old who's waking up to, you know, come on over, something exciting is happening in our classroom. So I thought this was kind of a good example of what happens when you have that grace and courtesy and you have that mutual respect and the social cohesion that's occurring in the classroom environment.
And the butterfly is a wonderful point of interest too. So.
Yes. Yeah.
Pam, thank you so much. I love you. And it's so I feel so lucky that I could share you with everyone, and really now look forward to the pilgrimage. So
Yes.
if we come up, I know we took more time, Mirka, than we planned, but if there are questions or anything that you're seeing that I think both Pam and I will be available for however long people would like to stay, or not however long, for a few minutes.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Pam.
Yeah.
Please stop sharing the screen so we can see each other. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you.
No. Thank you. And I think we all want to give you a little silent applause. This was really, really wonderful, packed with information. And I loved your photos and the love that just comes across. You could say, I could see the relationship you have toward your assistant just comes out in those photos. There's so much love and beauty in those photos. So I really appreciated that you shared those with us. Thank you so much.